everybody, and welcome to episode 74 of Piv's NXT Point of View podcast. My name is Bill Pivets. So I decided to change up the theme song a little bit. Instead of the NXT opening song, I went with Nakamura's song because that song is fucking awesome. He was actually featured a lot on this episode, so let's get right into July 27th, 2016 review of NXT. The show opened actually with Nakamura as he took on Wesley Blake. Blake had some weird piano music. They showed a video from earlier today with Blake and Murphy trying to one-up each other as Blake took on Nakamura and Murphy was taking on a surprise opponent who I'll get into in the main event. During the match, Blake blew Nakamura a kiss. He caught it though, sniffed it, and then stomped all over it. Later in the match, he landed good vibrations. Blake worked over Nakamura for a little bit, getting some nice offense in. Nakamura came back with his running knee in the corner, the reverse exploder suplex, and finished him off with Kinshasa. This was pretty much a glorified squash match. Surprised Blake got as much offense as he did, but it made for a good visual with Nakamura making his comeback. This wouldn't be the last you hear of Nakamura. He makes an appearance in the last segment of the show. But after the match, William Regal came out, and he had congratulated Nakamura on his recent victory and announced that Samoa Joe will defend his NXT championship against Nakamura at TakeOver. I think they're calling it Back to Brooklyn, but whatever the next TakeOver special is the night before SummerSlam. So there is your main event for TakeOver. You have Nakamura challenging Samoa Joe for the title. Second match of the show was Billie Kay versus Santana Garrett. The announcers talked about Kay's appearance on SmackDown a few months ago. I think she took on Dana Brooke. And that had inflated her ego for some reason. Garrett was building the comeback, but Kay countered with a nice big boot off the ropes to get the win. Decent match, but there's really nothing memorable here. There's no story. They just threw these two women out in the ring. And this is, unfortunately, the women's matches we're going to be getting until they build another star, because all they got is Asuka right now. With Carmella, Alexa Bliss, Nia Jax, and eventually Bayley getting the call to the main roster. These are the kind of women's matches you're going to be expecting, and Asuka's going to have to carry them all, and I kind of feel bad for her, because some of these women, I mean, they're talented, but there's just no story behind them, no character development behind them. I know you have Peyton Royce is like Venus flytrap of NXT. I don't know what Billie Kay is. Santana Garrett looked like a rainbow just splattered onto her outfit. So it's going to be a little difficult for the women's division right now, and for the next couple weeks. Hopefully it's only weeks. So I hope you guys are ready. The announcers then recapped Bayley's appearance at Battleground. Bayley then walked into Regal's office saying that he's been there for her biggest moment and that she's ready for her rematch. Regal said that he would that's a good idea and he'll talk it over with Asuka. So I think it's safe to say we're going to get a Asuka Bayley 3 at TakeOver. Third match was TM61 against Rob Rising and Adrian Nails. Are they just like getting part of old 90s gimmicks like Terrorizing and Nails and just attaching them to some guy's first name? Anyway, TM61 worked over Nails in the corner. Thorne landed a springboard senton from the apron, similar to what Eddie Guerrero used to do. Nails created some space and he tagged in Rising. The jobbers got some offense in, but Miller got the hot tag. He took out both guys. After they hit a spinebuster, TM61 hit what they call Thunder Valley to get the win. Another job match here. NXT's got some great talent, but until they start developing as the stars to replace the guys that they lost, like American Alpha, Finn Balor, I think those are probably the top two names that they've lost in the draft. It's gonna be matches like these, and it's gonna take some time to develop. But TM61 they're a good team. They got some fans behind them already, so it's just a matter of time before they get to that level. We got a video package recapping the feud of Austin Aries and No Way Jose. I still get a kick out of Austin Aries dancing in his polo shirt and jeans, where this feud started last month. I don't know. It was very funny. He's just so white when he dances. We got a vignette. Hideo Itami returns next week. There was a recap, like some highlights when he first signed, saying he was the biggest international signing in WWE history. And since then, they've signed bigger names like Asuka and Shinsuke Nakamura and Finn Balor and Kevin Owens and all these guys. Let's just see if they could recover any stock that he's lost since he's been gone. I don't know which direction they're going to go with him, babyface, heel, whatever the case is. It's just good to have another name back on the NXT roster. Fourth match, No Way Jose versus Steve Cutler. Cutler shoved Jose's face, like he kind of palmed him, and I keep messing that name up. Noah Jose hulked up a little bit. He landed a nice hip toss into a neck breaker. He connected with this like wind up punch and then hit a straight jacket slam to get the win. And it was at this point that I just got very bored of the episode. It's like 4 squash matches in a row as far as the obvious winner. There's really no story. That's the thing. Like, I'm not invested in any of these matches. I know who's going to win. It's just, what do I have to sit through to get to that and get to the outcome? After the match, though, Jose called out Austin Aries. He said he tried to show Austin Aries some good vibes and what he brings to NXT, but Aries mistook him for something that he's not, and Aries he was the greatest man in the universe, is that what he calls himself? To the biggest coward in NXT, and that he's going to whoop Aries' ass. I like this intensity from Jose. Like I said last week, 2 weeks ago when he attacked Austin Aries. It's just, he's a good wrestler. I like it. I just feel, or sports entertainer. I just feel bad that he's saddled with this dancing gimmick, because we've seen where these dancing gimmicks go, and it's not up. It's not up. I know I missed it somewhere in here. No, I didn't. Never mind. I was going to talk about someone debuting next week, but that's after the main event, which is Kota Ibushi against Buddy Murphy. So Ibushi is competing in the Cruiserweight Classic. Speaking of that, I know I said I would be recapping that. I just don't have the time, unfortunately, to recap the Cruiserweight Classic. I will give my thoughts at the end of this episode on the Cruiserweight Classic, but as for now, we have Ibushi in the main event against Buddy Murphy. Ibushi got a huge reaction. I wonder if he speaks any English. I know Nakamura's decent, Asuka's alright, Hideo Itami's getting there. So I just don't know where Ibushi is with that, especially since he most likely signed with NXT, if they're going to have him cut promos. Ibushi kicked Murphy, and then he landed a standing moonsault. Murphy was using his strength and his size to wear down Ibushi. He connected with running knees out of the corner and got a near fall. They went back and forth for a little bit. Ibushi caught him off the ropes with the most sickest kick I've ever seen. The crowd popped for it. They had their hands over their mouths. It was just the best reaction from the crowd, just from the sound of that kick alone. And then he followed that up immediately with a German suplex. Murphy was able to dodge a moonsault. He took back control. Ibushi countered a superplex and landed a huge sit-out powerbomb to get the win. I think we saw him use a sit-out powerbomb in his first round match in the Cruiserweight Classic. Obviously, it was the best match of the night. Murphy was able to hold his own. He's actually much better than Wesley Blake. But this was obviously the Ibushi showcase as he's getting some time on NXT. Some of the moves that were used in this match were very, very cool. Like the super kick out of nowhere. I mean, we've seen it before, but just the way it came out. Murphy held his own, and the near falls that he had were actually pretty cool too. As far as Blake and Murphy, I'm not sure what their gimmicks are. Murphy's still using his old theme song in attire. Blake had like red, white, and blue on, and like tassels, and like some weird slow piano music. They're good hands in the ring, but I just don't see them having a future as a singles act, unless they start developing them somehow. After that, we saw that Samoa Joe was walking into NXT, and he was asked what his reaction was to Regal announcing Nakamura challenging for the title. Joe said he was flabbergasted at the disrespect, and he will fix it. After that, we got a picture showing that Bobby Roode will make his NXT debut next week. Finally. That's for one. He's been making the rounds on the NXT house show loop, so he's been in the ring before people have seen him, but now he'll be on NXT TV. I wonder if he's going to face Nakamura or attack him. Or not Nakamura, Hideo Itami. That would be interesting. But the final segment was Samoa Joe coming out to the ring, calling out William Regal, that he had some oversight by not consulting Joe about his match, and that he will not be facing Nakamura. He called Nakamura undeserving and hasn't done nearly what Joe has done to earn the NXT Championship. William Regal came out and he had like the most disgusted look on his face. It was very comical. He said his decisions are final and Samoa Joe will fight who he wants him to fight. Joe brought up the fact that when he asked Regal for a title shot, he had to jump through many hoops to earn his shot. Regal said that if he refuses to defend his title, he'll consider it a forfeit and then pick someone else to fight Nakamura for the title. Joe, pissed off, accepted the match, and that he's going to decimate Nakamura, just like what he did to Finn Balor. As William Regal was leaving, Nakamura came out again. They both stared at each other. Joe, furious, Nakamura playing some head games. He bowed to him and then left, as Joe was standing in the ring, which ended this week's episode of NXT. Overall, decent show at the best. I really can't give it anything higher than like a B, maybe. We're getting some build towards NXT TakeOver, which is nice. You had the NXT Championship match. The NXT Women's Championship match is pretty much all but confirmed. Aries and Jose is obviously a match that they're going to build towards. NXT Tag Team titles are going to be defended somehow. And I'm assuming Bobby Roode's going to have a match, considering they're bringing him in now. So the card should be good. It's not going to be as good as the first time they were in Brooklyn last year, but the match quality should be good nonetheless. The amount of squash matches that they had just bored me. I know this was, I think, the final set of the taping, so now it's like the fresh set, as I think they were about three weeks away from TakeOver, or 4 weeks. I think it's 3 away from TakeOver, so that now the fresh set of tapings get these feuds rolling. The women's match, worst match of the card. I just didn't care. Billie Kay, Santana Garrett, whatever. They're not what I'm used to in the women's division. Not to insult them in any way. It's just they threw them out here with no story behind it, so it's just a throwaway match, if anything. Not even a squash match. Ibushi on the card was nice, though. It was good seeing him. I don't think they didn't advertise it at all, which was surprising. But it couldn't save the show at all. So next week, Hideo Itami returns and Bobby Roode makes his NXT debut. Should be a lot of fun. So before I end, I'm going to go over the Cruiserweight Classic. They just had their 3rd episode, which is the 3rd set of first round matchups. So far, we've seen Tajiri, Brian Kendrick, Zack Sabre Jr. was on this episode, TJ Perkins, I believe, was last week, Grand Metalik. There's been some really good action. I'm trying to think what my favorite match was. From a story standpoint, I probably have to go with the Brian Kendrick, who is he facing? Brian Kendrick, Raul Mendoza match. Just because of the story, I was hoping that Brian Kendrick would be faced like a redemption storyline, but he was more heelish, similar to what his character was in SmackDown before he left. TJ Perkins is really good in the ring. I like him a lot. Zack Sabre Jr. was very particular with his moves. He was very slow moving. I've seen some people on Twitter were calling it boring, but just his submission holds that he had, just insane. Grand Metalik and Alejandro Saiz had a really good match too. Some of these matches aren't even going 5 minutes. Like the Grand Metalik match went like a little over 4 minutes, considering they only they're fitting 4 matches into an hour show. So they're showcasing them. Tajiri looked good. He looked old though. I haven't seen him since, when did he get released from WWE? 2007, 2008. So it's been almost 8 or 9 years, so he definitely aged. Next week, we do get Jack Gallagher. Who else is on next week's episode? Oh, the match between Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa takes place next week. Rich Swann has his match next week. The spoilers are up already on Wikipedia, so if you want to see who advances to the quarterfinals, they're up. And I think Akira Tozawa and Kenneth Johnson face off next week. But yeah, they already have the quarterfinals. Considering the names in the tournament, you shouldn't be surprised who's in that round, in the final 8. But overall, it's been a really great tournament. Mauro Ranallo and Daniel Bryan are great on commentary. Just some of the back and forth between, and they're actually calling the moves. It's an educational lesson as far as an entertainment show, listening to them. So if you guys haven't checked it out, I definitely would, especially with the first round wrapping up and the round of 16 taking place the week after. But yeah, the Cruiserweight Classic, it's definitely a change of pace what WWE has been doing, especially with the bigger guys, or the smaller guys on this show, and the bigger guys that they've used to sign. So it's just nice to acknowledge the smaller guys and just how entertaining they can be. It's not just a big spot fest with all these guys doing flips and dives and everything. They're very technical in the ring. A lot of them are submission based. But some of the guys are diving, doing flips and stuff like that in and out of the ring. So it's, what's what I'm looking for? It's breaking up the monotony of what could be a technical match or a spot festing. Because if every match it just has one guy diving every time, it can get boring after a while too, even how cool those moves look. So it's just very exciting to see these guys get a chance in NXT in front of this audience. Granted, they're in Full Sail, but just seeing everyone on the network too that are watching these guys. And obviously, WWE's using this as pretty much a tryout for most of these guys getting their shot in WWE. I know, or I've heard a rumor that Kota Ibushi is already signed, Tozawa is already signed, and I think Zack Sabre Jr. or TJ Perkins, one of the two, have already signed or have seen a deal given to them. So it's considering all the guys that NXT's lost, they need to replace them somehow, and this is definitely a good way to do that. Alright guys, this was episode 74 of Piv's NXT Point of View podcast. If you guys want, follow me on Twitter at bpiv_sports, and rate, review the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, YouTube, wherever you guys are listening to this. I greatly appreciate that. I'll be back next week with episode 75. Peace.